Dear all, Autism Learning Materials Supermarket is an autism community project implemented by NBAI, AI for Autism, Job for Autism, and Mr. Ladun Lum to provide authentic and updated 24/7 documents thanks to artificial intelligence for parents with children with autism and related disorders, specialized teachers, inclusive teachers, and therapists. Today, we would like to introduce video N0.56, Music Therapy for Autistic People, the science.
Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something really cool, a massive scientific review that digs into music therapy for autistic people. The evidence has just been updated, so we're going to break down exactly what the latest science has to say. So, here's the central question. Can music really build a bridge where words can't? For decades, this has been the big idea that therapists have explored. But now, we're going to look at the hard evidence to see if we can find an answer.
All right, so first up, let's set the stage a bit. What are the core challenges that something like music therapy is even trying to help with?
So let's start with the why. For a lot of autistic people, social communication and interaction can be, a persistent challenge. And music therapy has actually been in the picture since the 1950s with the hope that it could help. Now, you'll notice we're saying autistic people. That's intentional. It's following the lead of the researchers themselves who consulted with the community on this. The real question is, does this therapy, which has been around for so long, actually work?
Okay, but before we jump into the findings, we gotta be on the same page. What exactly is music therapy in a clinical, scientific sense?
Yeah, this is really important. We're not just talking about putting on some relaxing tunes or listening to a favorite playlist. Music therapy is a clinical practice. It involves a credentialed, trained professional who uses music in a very deliberate way to help someone work towards specific, individual goals. It's all happening within that formal therapeutic relationship.
So why would music even work for this? Well, there's this fascinating theory called communicative musicality. And the idea is pretty intuitive when you think about it. We're basically born wired for the music of conversation. The rhythm, the pitch, the back and forth timing. Since music is built on those exact same elements, it can act as this powerful, nonverbal way to practice social exchange in a structured yet flexible environment.
That theory sounds pretty convincing, right? But here's where the science comes in. How do you actually test that? How do you separate what we hope is true from what the facts actually show? Let's see how they put it to the test. So get this. We're not just looking at one study. We're talking about a Cochrane review. And if you know anything about medical evidence, you know that's basically the gold standard. It's where researchers gather all the high-quality studies on a topic and synthesize them. This isn't the first one either. There were versions in 2006 and 2014. But the one we're looking at is the big 2022 update, and it's by far the most complete. So, just how big was this review? The researchers pulled together data from 26 different high-quality trials. And across all those studies, we're talking about 1,165 people, mostly kids and young adults. That's a lot of data. Combining information on this scale gives the findings so much more power than any single study ever could. And believe me, this process is no joke. It's incredibly thorough. First, they have to find every single eligible trial out there. Then they go through each one with a fine-toothed comb, checking its quality and looking for any potential bias. After that, they pool all the data together in what's called a meta-analysis. And finally, and this is the crucial part, they grade how certain we can actually be about the results. And all that work leads to something I like to call the certainty meter. This is so important. Moderate certainty, that's good. It means we can be pretty confident the results are real. But low or very low certainty, that's like a scientific warning sign, telling us that, hey, our confidence here is limited and new research could easily change what we think we know. So keep that meter in your head as we go through the findings. All right, this is it. The moment we've been building up to. After all that detective work and rigorous analysis, what did the evidence actually show? What's the verdict? So, here's the verdict, the big picture summary. On one hand, it looks like music therapy probably helps with some really important broad things, like overall well-being and quality of life. But on the other hand, when you get down to specific communication skills, the picture gets, a little fuzzy. Let's break that down. Okay, let's dive into the good news first, the stuff where the evidence is the strongest. These are the findings that came with moderate certainty.
So with that moderate certainty we talked about, the review found music therapy likely leads to global improvement. That just means an increased chance of overall improvement after the therapy. It also showed a small to medium positive bump in quality of life and a large reduction in overall autism symptom severity. And really importantly, it seems to do this safely, with no evidence of more adverse events than standard care.
And I love this because it makes the data so much more real. What does global improvement actually mean in practice? Well, the numbers show that for every 6 to 11 people who get music therapy, one extra person shows that overall improvement compared to those who don't. That's not just a statistic, that's a tangible, real-world impact. Okay, now for the other side of the coin. And this is what makes good science so trustworthy. It's totally honest about what it doesn't know yet. For some really key outcomes, the evidence just wasn't strong enough. And remember, that doesn't mean the therapy doesn't work for these things, it just means we can't be sure yet. And this is where things get really interesting and honestly a little tricky. The review found low or very low certainty evidence for improvements in specific skills like social interaction and nonverbal or verbal communication. Now, that might sound surprising, but what the researchers noted was that while skills often improved during the sessions, there wasn't clear proof that those skills carried over outside the therapy room. And that's a super common challenge in any kind of therapy, right? Taking what you learn and applying it out in the wild. Okay, so we've got some clear wins and some big question marks. What do we do with all this? What's the takeaway for autistic people, their families, and the clinicians working with them? You know, I think the authors themselves said it best in their final conclusion. They state that the findings provide evidence that music therapy is probably associated with an increased chance of global improvement. I love that careful wording, probably associated. It's cautious, but it's definitely optimistic. But this isn't the end of the story. The review gives us a fantastic roadmap for what needs to happen next. Researchers need to use even more rigorous study designs to boost that certainty meter. They need to focus on outcomes that the autistic community itself says are most important. And, this is a big one, they need to study autistic adults because almost all the current research is on kids. Plus, they need to follow up longer to see if the positive effects last. And that really leaves us with this huge, lingering question. We have solid evidence that music shows real promise for autistic kids and young people. But what about for adults? What could music therapy unlock there? The truth is, when it comes to adults, the research has barely scratched the surface. And answering that question, well, that's the next chapter in this fascinating story. Thanks for digging into the science with me on The Explainer.
Autism Learning Materials Supermarket would like to thank parents, teachers, and interventionists. Please disseminate to relevant people in the autism community so that more and more people can access this authentic and scientific learning resource. To raise awareness in the community, please subscribe to watch the next videos. For any questions, please contact the email below.